Nigeria is the 13th largest crude oil producer in the world and the largest producer in Africa, so the nation has a lot of refineries where crude oil is refined and transformed into useful products like premium motor spirit known as gasoline, automotive gas oil AGO also known as diesel, dual purpose kerosene DPK also known as kerosene, and other useful petroleum and petrochemical products. The significant majority of Nigeria's crude oil is produced in the Niger Delta region, which are primarily found in the southeast and south-south geopolitical zones of the country. Despite their small numbers, these oil-producing states contribute a considerable portion of Nigerians' income, making them some of the richest states in the nation at the moment. The first refinery was built in Port Harcourt in 1965 with a capacity to process 60,000 barrels per day, and another one in the same Port Harcourt in 1989 which could process 150,000 barrels per stream day. The Warri refinery was commissioned in 1979 to produce initially 100,000 barrels per stream day and later upgraded to produce 125,000 barrels per day. The Kaduna refinery was the largest among the 4 refineries owned by the NNPCL and was constructed in 1980. When President Bola Ahmed Tinubu made the announcement of subsidy removal, Nigerians were hit severely by its impact, and many Nigerians are seeking to know about the fate of government-owned refineries. There are 4 moribund refineries in Nigeria, and for over 40 years, the question in the minds of many Nigerians is how these refineries should be fully operational. Some are of the opinion that government should construct new refineries due to the fact that the technology that will be used to revamp these refineries might be obsolete. Finding new parts to replace dead or faulty machines may be near impossible due to the advent of new technology. In the crude oil refining industry, others are saying rather than constructing a new refinery due to high cost, we should do all we can to make sure that the old ones are refurbished. Whether parts are difficult to find or not, there must be somewhere around the planet where old parts of refineries will be duly gotten to make Nigeria refineries to operate optimally. The big question is refurbishing our old refineries or constructing new ones to check the hardship meted on Nigerians occasioned by subsidy removal. What do you feel? How do you think this can be achieved to really make Nigerians not to feel the impact of subsidy removal? Should the government of the day construct the refineries, or should they go and refurbish old refineries because we have 4 of them in this country that are moribund?
If we can reform the refineries in Delta, Port Harcourt and the North, or the Dangotes, we should build new ones. And refineries should be done by Nigerians, the indigents. We can get fuel to as low as 50 naira per litre if we are the ones producing it. Let's cut off all this expert trade, foreigners and all of this, and sit down. Of course, we have to suffer the backlash before it can get better. But like I said, if we can't reform the refineries we have right now, I'm of the opinion that we should build new ones. And I indulge Nigerians to please be patient, because going into a drastic change like that, from having fuel and oil brought in from outside the country to mainly base everything in Nigeria, it gave us more job opportunities. They don't cheat us anymore. We have less loans. We start producing by ourselves. So I think the refineries should be done by Nigerians and not from outside the country. If we can't reform, like I said, the refineries we have on ground, let us build new ones. The president should be able to come out and say, if you have the sources, or even if it's a federal government allocation, let us build new refineries so that we can easily sell fuel to ourselves. Nigeria is big on oil for us to be buying or getting foreigners to bring in oil for us. So I think what the president did, it might be a drastic move which will hit Nigerians, but give it a little time, it's going to come down, because what he's trying to do is to make sure that jobs come back to the country and we stop getting loans in order of all this bringing in fuel, this, that. The backlash is heavy, I understand that, but it's going to get better.
Every government in and now talks about refurbishing, doing turnaround maintenance, but the people sadly never get to hear anything beneficial to them as touching the refineries. And so if you ask me what we should do to our refineries, I would rather we include the private sector in building new refineries. Government should not have a business running our refineries, because we're seeing what happens when government runs refineries. So let's have private individuals come build the refineries, run them in collaboration with the government. Then there will be a buy-in by the people into what the private sector is doing with the government. It's called public-private partnership. That's the only way. That's how it has progressed in other crimes. There's a sense in which we must borrow from a model that is working, because we have adopted our own model, and for the past 50 years we have not made progress. So let's just adopt and adapt from countries that have progressed in oil refining, and let's borrow what they've done and replicate the same in our system. And you will see that as time will go on, when we're refining our own products, the prices will certainly drop, and Nigerians will benefit from the God-given resource that they have.
With respect to the issue of refining, local refineries, I think there are two sides to it. One is that it's a no-brainer that we need to have refineries in Nigeria that are functional, that are working, so that we can refine locally. What that does for us is that the cost of shipping and other ancillary costs that are factored in when you refine abroad, those costs are deducted, and then the cost of the finished product will necessarily be cheaper if we refine here. So of course it's desirable, but the question for me is, should government continue to operate refineries? I sincerely think that government should not run refineries. Government can be an ownership structure in such a way and manner that government have majority of the shareholding. Government can have 80%, but the management, the operation of those refineries must be given to private sector professionals who can do a good job, who have cognate experience, not like what we have in the electricity market, where we brought in private sector guys without cognate experience. A couple of them, from what we have seen, so many years, we still do not have power, regularly in our houses. But for energy, for the petroleum refinery sector, I think that government should fix the existing refineries and structure them in such a way that government will not have control. Government can have controlling share, but not control over day-to-day running and management. The reason is that over years, governments in Nigeria have shown consistently that they do a bad job in managing public enterprises.
According to the Department of Petroleum Resources, Nigeria recently has 5 operational refineries. The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC), which controls 4 of these facilities, and the Niger Delta Petroleum Resources, which controls the 5th refinery, are both owned and run by the federal government of Nigeria, NDPR. 2 of the refining facilities, KRPC and WRPC, include petrochemical complexes that utilize their refinery intermediates to produce petrochemical precursors, which are employed in the production of petrochemical intermediates, in addition to 1 fully fledged petrochemical plant. Let's examine the petroleum refineries that are operational in Nigeria and their location without further ado. The Port Harcourt Refinery Company, PHRC Limited, a division of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, runs the 210,000 barrel per day complicated conversion unit in Port Harcourt Refinery, NNPC. 2 refineries in Alasa Eleme, River State make up the PHRC. The new plant's nameplate capacity is 150,000 barrels per day, whereas the old refinery's nameplate capacity is 60,000 barrels per day. The old refinery was first put into operation in 1965. Liquefied petroleum gas (LPG), premium motor spirits (PMS), dual purpose kerosene (DPK), automotive gas oil (AGO), low poor fuel oil (LPFO), and high poor fuel oil are all produced in the plant using burning light crude oil (HPFO), with an estimated capacity of 100,000 barrels per stream day when it was built in 1978. The Warri Refinery was the bottleneck to 125,000 barrels per stream day in 1987. The Warri Refinery, a petrochemicals company, WRPC Limited, an NNPC subsidiary, runs a refinery which is situated at Ekpan, Warri, Delta State. The refinery was built as a sophisticated conversion facility that could transform crude oil from escravos and ugeli into liquefied petroleum gas (LPG), premium motor spirits (PMS), dual purpose kerosene (DPK), automotive gas oil (AGO), and fuel oil. A series of petrochemical plants owned by WRPC generates decant oil from the fluid catalytic cracking unit, polypropylene, and carbon black from feedstock that is high in propylene, FCCU. The Kaduna Refinery, which is situated in Kaduna State, has an estimated refining capacity of 110,000 barrels per day. The facility, which has a complicated conversion design, is administered by Kaduna Refining and Petrochemicals KRPC Limited, a division of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPCL). The KRPC has a fuel plant that was put into operation in 1983 and a 30,000 MT per year petrochemical plant that was built in 1988. The refinery includes 2 distillation units that produce fuel from escravos and ugeli crude oils, as well as lubricant base oil, asphalt, and waxes from imported heavy crude oil. Liquefied petroleum gas (LPG), premium motor spirits (PMS), household kerosene (HHK), aviation turbine kerosene (ATK), automotive gas oil (AGO), and fuel oil are amongst the products purchased from KRPC. Linear alkyl benzene is produced in the petrochemical facility LAB. The 1,000 barrel per day NDPR refinery is situated in Ogbele, Rivers State. The facility is designed to produce diesel for internal use, and any extra is sold to the neighborhood. The Niger Delta Exploration and Production Company (NDEP), an upstream affiliate, runs a flow station within its marginal field from which the plant receives crude oil. As the core investor, Indorama purchased the LMA Petrochemical Company Limited (EPCL), formerly known as the Indorama LMA Petrochemicals Company Limited (IEPL), from the NNPC in 2006 as part of the privatization program. The complex, which is LMA Rivers State, processes natural gas liquids (NGL) from the Nigerian Ajib Oil Company (NAOC) and propylene-rich feed from Port Harcourt Refinery to produce a variety of polyethylene and polypropylene products, has butane one production capacity of 22,000 tons per annum. Polyethylene production capacity of 270,000 TPA and polypropylene production capacity of 80,000 TPA. Through careful management, IEPL restored the previously underutilized plant, stabilized petrochemical production over time, and is now poised to expand the plant complex. It is worthy to note that there are other private refineries that were issued license to operate by the Department of Petroleum Resources (DPR). Over the years, refineries in Nigeria have declined in production capacity to the extent of not being able to refine crude for its citizens. Nigerian government had to rely on importation of fuel to meet demand. Despite billions of dollars spent, the 4 major government-owned refineries are in comatose. Nigeria spent more than $10 billion in the decade on 3 oil refineries that produce hardly any fuel. It cost the state-owned Nigerian National Petroleum Company 4.8 trillion naira, which is equivalent to $10.3 billion, to run the facilities from 2010 to 2022, even if they were operating far below their combined capacity of 145,000 barrels of crude per day. By the time they were put into rehabilitation, they had almost ceased to function, and the output had not exceeded 30% since 2010, according to reports. That left Nigeria entirely reliant on gasoline imports, whose price was kept artificially low by fuel subsidy. The decades-long subsidy regime was scrapped by newly sworn-in President Bola Tinubu, and the government has been working to address the refining challenges to tamper fuel prices. After the removal of subsidies, Nigerians have been hit so hard that fuel increment twice within the space of 2 months. Some respondents shared their opinion on the prospect of having a functional government refineries on subsidy removal.
For us as a nation, having discovered in the year 1956, if I'm not mistaken, at the Oloribiri, I think by now we should have about every state of the federation would have refinery. As I said earlier, maybe as a result of the theories. There are some other nations of the world that decide to leave their oil in the sun, like Netherlands or Holland. They left their oil in the sun, but to many, it's unknown to us. For us, now that we've decided, okay, let's extract our oil, I think it's high time that we need to sit up. And in doing so, we must come up with innovations, initiatives that will be able to address some of the peculiar problems that is confronting us. Within 2 months, from 200 or something, we are now at 600 or something, even some states 700. Something unheard of. Because each and every one of us, to also get from point A to point B, we need fear. So that should have been the reason why our leaders should sit up and see how we can have a functional refinery.
We have an issue, we have a challenge in Nigeria, and the Nigeria problem is becoming hydra-headed. Nobody really can understand why the government, or the leadership of this country decided to toe the part of republics, part that has no moral standing, in managing the country we call our common patrimony. Now, we really cannot be in position to talk about removal of subsidy if we do not have an input where services or the government expertise is provided. In this case, I'm saying we are oil producing country, and we do not have any functioning refinery right now. So it's absurd. It's a shame to think about it. Now, and the only way we can really brace up with the challenges that are confronting us is if we had at least one of the refinery working. And the question I keep asking, I remember I did ask this in 2004 when I moved the motion against the regulation then, because the government didn't have any justification when the refineries were not working up to maximum capacity, and yet they want to deregulate. You cannot deregulate when you are not a player. After 20 years, after 30 years, we cannot reconstruct any of the refinery. It is unbelievable. And nobody is thinking about it. It looks like they have been overwhelmed. If we believe that the old ones cannot be refurbished, why can't we set up a fresh one? Everybody is running away from it. And meanwhile, you want to consume the product of what you are running away from. I don't understand. Everybody want to push it to a private sector. I am one of those that believe government has business being a business. So I do not see any reason why government cannot reconstruct a refinery and make it work, where they make profit and the citizen will benefit from employment, and it will increase our national hike.
With time in this country, we've been able to create our own problems for ourselves. You see, creating the problem for ourselves, there are certain things we need to change. First, our attitude and policies. NNPC needs to be straight and blunt about this petroleum system. First of all, we have a lot of companies that have marginal fields, and they have areas where they've been giving wells to drill and all the rest. Tell those companies to build mini refineries, like the one in Ologbo. The one in Ologbo was built, but there was a problem. They refused to give them license to produce petroleum products. They're only producing diesel, and it's not enough. And our cost of first of all, we have transportation problem is part of the problem. Even this, if you like if you go to Sapele Road now, if you are going to Ogada, it takes time for it to load. Those are blocks of problems that have been piling up with time. So the major issue in solving this thing, first of all, are they really allowing people to open refineries? Are they really? Is NNP or NPDC giving free access, clean access for them to start operating their licenses? I'm aware that Ologbo Refinery, they had to pass through a lot of hurdles before they could start production.
What is actually the problem with Nigeria refineries? Nigeria has spent almost, or if not more than ₦1 trillion to revamp the 4 refineries. Up till now, the refineries are not working. What is actually the fault with the refinery? That is what they're supposed to know. Because I don't think there's anything as far as the world is concerned without spare parts. Either you repair or you replace. Those are the 2 things. For example, your car is faulty. You find that the engine is faulty. Either you repair the engine or you replace the engine. Those are the 2 things that you need to do. Actually, what is the problem of the refinery? That is the question the press needs to go and find out. They have to go straight to the refineries. People that the government contracted the refinery to. Ask them what is the fault. Let them tell the public the fault of the refinery. From there, people will know. I know that as far as Nigeria is concerned, we have petrochemicals engineers. People that are well able. Nigeria have the human capacity to fix that refinery if they want to do it.
By God's grace, if Dangote Refinery starts operating now, because of it being a private company, we'll see the zeal and the motivations from the staffs that will be working there compared to if it's under government. Because if it's under our government, I don't know what is really wrong with this, with most of our government officials. To me, our government doesn't have any business in operating our refineries. It was when when it was under operational under our government that all the 4 refineries we had were grounded. We saw what happened in the aviation industry, in the aviation sectors, when Nigeria Airways till today we've still not been able to bring them up. So the government should they should sell those refineries. They should all be privatized.
Some factors, however, have been fingered for the comatose nature of Nigerian-owned refineries. These are the problem of poor governance has been recognized as a key factor that has affected the performance of the refineries. The refineries are 100% owned by the government and have no independent control of or access to their funds. All requests for funds to carry out maintenance are subject to multi-layer bureaucratic processes. Approvals for any meaningful maintenance are subject to consideration first by the Refinery Management Committee, thereafter by the Corporate Refineries Directorate, and then by the Corporate Management Committee, followed by the Corporate Board, and finally by the National Federal Executive Committee, chaired by the President of the nation. Depending on the amounts required, these processes often require months to go through the various stages. Refineries cannot run reliably in this manner. Outright commercialization or outright divestment of significant equity has been promoted as a solution to this problem. The Petroleum Industry Bill, which was first presented to the National Assembly in 2007, was intended to introduce better governance along these lines. Unfortunately, the bills have been considered by successive assemblies but is yet to be passed nor signed into law. Typically, a petroleum refinery is a complex manufacturing plant designed to convert crude oil feedstock into a definite number and types of petroleum products. The types of products fall into 2 major categories, namely fuel products and lubricating products. The fuel refinery is designed to produce 5 types of products, namely LPG, liquefied petroleum gas or cooking gas, PMS, premium motor spirits or petrol, DPK, dual purpose kerosene, AGO, automotive gas oil or diesel, and fuel oil. best practice is that a refinery is designed and built to produce defined quantities and specification of each of these products, operating in a continuous manner without interruption for 24 to 36 months based on proper maintenance culture before it is systematically shut down for a period to carry out turnaround maintenance (TAM). When the turnaround maintenance is unduly delayed, performance of the refinery declines. A more serious consequence is that the country is forced to resort to importation of petroleum products and massive waste of scarce foreign exchange. Machines and other service facilities are subject to deterioration due to their use and exposure to process and environmental conditions. This deterioration requires to be duly taken care of by various maintenance intervention techniques and at certain predetermined intervals so that the required use of facilities can be continued and service life extended until the point where maintenance cost becomes prohibitive and replacement action becomes inevitable. On old car, for instance, periodic service maintenance is an example. The American Petroleum Institute (API) defines turnaround as a periodic shutdown or total, partial, depends on the case of a refinery process until a plant to perform maintenance, overhaul and repair operations and to inspect, test and replace process materials and equipment. Turnarounds are critical for the health of a refinery and are the single most costly part of a plant or process plant maintenance budget. Another issue is vandalization of crude and product pipelines commenced in the late 1990s. Some scholar works have sought to elucidate the reason for this development. Two major reasons have been attributed: the agitation for resource control and the attendant rise of militancy in the Niger Delta region. Outright theft of crude oil and petroleum product. Thus, the problem of pipeline vandalization warrants special treatment. The security and safety of pipeline infrastructure are imperative for the viability of the downstream oil and gas sector. The frequency of insertions of valves, outright stealing of crude and redefined products, bombing of the pipeline by aggrieved and criminal elements have contributed significantly to worsening the on-stream time efficiency of the refineries. These activities have resulted in huge losses to the country, as well as degraded the crude oil supply and product facilities. Other associated problems include pollution of the environment, fire outbreak, loss of insurance of downstream assets, and shutdown of refineries due to supply chain strategy and approach, which includes incorporating additional safety and security features for the pipelines, shall minimize and deter this nefarious activity, which has significant negative consequences on the revenues of the companies and the country at large. No matter how one sees it, for Nigeria to survive the era of subsidy removal and to stop upward review of the prices of fuel or petroleum products, government-owned refineries must be fully operational and functional to meet the daily fuel needs of Nigerians. Wilson Omasho reporting.